You think you are in charge of your life, but something deeper commands. Every silent choice you make is programming a future you do not see. If you do not learn to lead yourself, your mind becomes open territory. Most people move through life as if their mind is public property, open to every opinion, pressure, and mood that passes. They copy reactions, copy emotions, copy standards, and call it personality. Dark psychology begins here because whoever shapes your inner code owns your visible life. When you start leading yourself from the inside, that code stops being random. You stop reacting as a product of the environment and you start responding as an architect. This invisible shift creates psychological strength that others can feel before you speak. They only see the surface, but your inner command quietly pulls their respect. Leading yourself means you decide what your mind is allowed to follow. You decide which thoughts get a chair at your inner table. You decide which emotions are signals and which are traps. Most people never make these decisions, so the world decides for them without asking. Social pressure writes their rules, fear sets their limits, and approval becomes their invisible master. When you do not lead yourself, you become a relay station for outside forces. You pass on the same insecurity, the same anger, the same confusion you absorbed. Real dark psychological strength starts when you cut that chain from within. Machiavelli once said, "If you do not command yourself, someone else will." This is not just a strategy for rulers, it is a manual for your nervous system. Your mind is always looking for a source of authority to obey. If that authority is not you, it becomes trends, noise, guilt, or manipulation. Self-leadership is the process of becoming that authority with calm clarity. It is not arrogance, it is inner order. You tell your mind what matters and what does not deserve energy. You choose a direction first, then allow emotions and thoughts to serve that direction. Notice how your reactions appear before you even decide anything. A message, a tone, a facial expression, and your body already prepares a response. This is your unseen programming working faster than your conscious mind. Dark psychology uses this. It targets triggers that live below your awareness. If someone can predict your automatic reaction, they can quietly steer your choices. Self-leadership breaks this pattern by inserting a small pause between trigger and response. In that pause, you become an observer, not a slave. You watch the wave rise before you decide to ride it or let it pass. This inner observer is your first secret weapon. You train it by noticing yourself in real time. You hear your voice and you also hear the tone under it. You feel your emotion and you also feel the story feeding it. You watch how a single word can shrink your confidence or inflate your ego. The goal is not to judge yourself. The goal is to see clearly. Clarity itself is power because what you see cannot control you in the same blind way. When you see your reactions, you stop confusing them with your identity. You realize you can lead them instead of becoming them. Bandura once said, "If you change how you see yourself, you change your actions." Self-leadership uses this principle with sharp precision. First, you define who you are willing to be, then you align your internal dialogue with that image. You speak to yourself as a commander speaks to a trusted unit. Firm, calm, respectful, and clear. No abuse, no begging, no drama. When your inner voice becomes stable, your nervous system slowly relaxes. You stop leaking anxiety, and people feel that stability without understanding why. They start to treat you as someone who is already going somewhere important. Dark psychology often works by shaking your inner image. It wants you doubtful, confused, and hungry for external confirmation. If you need others to confirm your worth, they can move you like a piece on a board. One compliment pulls you forward, one insult pushes you back. Self-leadership breaks this by building standards that do not change with moods. You decide what values define you and you protect them like a private code. You measure yourself against that code, not against random reactions from others. This creates quiet consistency, and consistency is read as strength by the human brain. There is another layer, more subtle and more dangerous. People try to lead you from the inside through guilt, fear, and sudden intimacy. Guilt hooks say you are a bad person if you do not obey. Fear spikes say you will lose everything if you resist. Sudden intimacy says trust me quickly, share, open everything now. Each of these tactics aims at one thing, your self-leadership seat. If they can make you doubt your own judgment, they can temporarily sit in that seat instead. When that happens, you start thinking with their priorities, not yours. You feel it as confusion, heaviness, and emotional pressure that you cannot explain. To neutralize these tactics, you do something very simple but very rare. You give yourself permission to delay your response. You silently declare, "I answer myself first, then I answer the world." This one rule rewires your entire psychological posture. Guilt loses speed when it cannot force an instant reply. Fear loses sharpness when you have time to examine it. False intimacy loses warmth when you let it pass through the filter of time. The more you practice delayed response, the more others sense your internal weight. They feel they cannot push you easily, so they unconsciously adjust their behavior around you. Self-leadership also changes the way you move toward success. Most people chase quick relief, not real progress. They want comfort now, validation now, easy praise now. Dark psychology in society feeds this hunger because a distracted mind is easy to guide. When you lead yourself, you shift your focus from comfort to direction. You accept short-term discomfort if it serves long-term strength. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, your identity upgrades slightly. You collect invisible evidence that you can trust yourself under pressure. This self-trust radiates outward as quiet authority, and people feel safer investing in you. Psychological strength that attracts success is not loud and not dramatic. It is the silent alignment between what you think, feel, and do. Your words match your choices match your standards, and your standards match your core values. This alignment is rare, so the mind of others notices it instantly. They may not describe it, but they call it presence, gravity, or aura. Opportunities start moving toward this presence because it looks stable in a chaotic world. Yet there is a deeper level of self-leadership that most people never reach, and that level changes how you handle power itself. You have already felt the first shift while reading these lines, a slight distance between your automatic reactions and your chosen responses. That distance is the doorway to something far stronger, a state where you are no longer simply resisting manipulation, but quietly bending reality toward your chosen direction, and you have no idea yet how far this power can go. You think your mind is free, but invisible forces guide your patterns. You believe you make independent choices, yet unseen rules shape every move. If you do not master these rules, they will quietly master you. Most people walk through life with a mind full of unexamined commands. Do this, avoid that, chase this, fear that. These commands were installed long before they understood their own desires. Dark psychology uses these hidden presets because a person who does not lead their inner world behaves like a predictable pattern. When you start taking control of these presets, you disrupt that predictability. Your thoughts stop running in circles, and your emotions stop reacting on autopilot. This internal reset is the second layer of psychological strength, the layer that separates followers from self-directed minds. Every person has three silent systems running beneath awareness: the system of belief, the system of identity, and the system of emotional association. If you do not lead these systems, they become open channels for manipulation. Your belief system defines what you accept as truth, your identity system defines what you think you deserve, and your emotional association system defines what you chase or avoid. When these systems function without leadership, anyone who knows your triggers can tilt them in their favor. But when you take command, these systems become a shield that protects your direction. Machiavelli once said, if you do not control the base, you lose every battle. Your base is these three systems. The world pushes them every day with fear signals, trend pressure, social comparison, and emotional noise. Without self-leadership, these signals become your inner voice. You start thinking with the world's fears instead of your own logic. You start reacting with borrowed emotions instead of grounded clarity. The mind becomes a crowded room filled with voices that are not yours. The first task of internal leadership is clearing that room. You remove every voice that does not serve your values. You reset your beliefs one by one. Beliefs are not ideas, they are command lines. If you believe you are not enough, your mind executes that command in every action. If you believe you cannot succeed, your energy drops before you even try. These commands create self-sabotage without effort. When you lead yourself, you rewrite these command lines with intention. You select beliefs that strengthen your direction, then attach action to support them. This is not blind positivity, it is psychological engineering. You choose beliefs that produce the identity you want, and identity produces behavior. Behavior produces results, and results reinforce identity. This loop becomes unbreakable when guided from within. Identity is the second silent system, and it is even more powerful. Identity decides your ceiling and your floor. It decides what you tolerate, what you pursue, and what you refuse. Dark psychology exploits weak identity by offering fast identity boosters. Quick validation, quick belonging, quick approval. Each offer is a bait disguised as comfort. When you accept these offers, you give permission for someone else to shape your worth. When you lead yourself, you build identity from inner standards, not outer reactions. You tell yourself who you are before the world tries to tell you. This is where internal strength becomes visible. People notice when your identity is no longer up for negotiation. They sense that their approval does not move you and their disapproval does not break you. This makes them adjust their tone, their words, even their expectations around you. The human brain respects someone whose identity does not shift with the weather. It reads consistency as competence and competence as leadership. This is why leading yourself attracts opportunities and respect without asking. You become the stable point in an unstable environment, and instability always gravitates towards stability. The third system is emotional association. This system decides what feels safe and what feels dangerous. It decides which tasks give energy and which tasks drain it. Emotional associations are formed early, and most people never update them. This is why they fear progress, crave comfort, or avoid responsibility without understanding why. Dark psychology uses emotional associations to steer behavior. If someone can attach fear to a goal, you will avoid that goal. If they can attach comfort to a trap, you will walk into it willingly. Self-leadership rewires these associations by pairing discipline with pride, clarity with peace, and progress with inner reward. Bandura once said, if you master your emotion, you master your action. Emotional association is the blueprint of this mastery. When you link the right emotions with the right actions, your habits become automatic. Progress stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like alignment. This shift silences many external influences because manipulation loses power when your emotions no longer respond to cheap triggers. People feel this emotional neutrality, and it makes them cautious about pushing you. Emotional stability is read as strength, and strength attracts respect before words even begin. Now observe the deeper impact. Once your belief system stabilizes, your identity strengthens, and your emotional associations align, your entire psychological posture changes. You walk differently, you speak differently, and you respond differently. This change is not dramatic, it is subtle and controlled. People sense that you are not moved by noise, not shaken by pressure, and not owned by approval. They cannot place you in familiar categories because you are not reacting from the usual scripts. This unpredictability creates mystery, and mystery increases perceived power. Self-leadership also improves how you handle uncertainty. Most people panic when the future is unclear, so they chase quick answers that feel safe. But when you lead yourself, you stay calm in uncertainty because your direction is internal, not external. You trust your process more than external conditions. This calmness looks like confidence, even when you are still figuring things out. Others see this and assume you know something they do not. They interpret your calm as control and control as strength. This strengthens your psychological presence in every room, as if you carry your own atmosphere. Yet there is a twist that most people never discover. The more you strengthen these inner systems, the more you will begin to see patterns in others that they cannot see in themselves. You will recognize the beliefs they obey without questioning, the identity they defend without understanding, and the emotional associations that guide their impulsive choices. You will see their mind before they show their behavior. This insight is powerful, but it also opens a dangerous question. If you can see these hidden systems in others so clearly, what will you do with that knowledge when the moment of influence arrives? You think your thoughts are private, but your patterns reveal everything. You believe your intentions are hidden, yet your micro-reactions expose truth. If you do not lead these reactions, someone else will read and use them. The third layer of self-leadership begins with understanding this silent exposure. Every movement of your face, every shift in your tone, every flicker of hesitation acts like a psychological map. People with strong perception read these signals instantly. They see your fears, your uncertainty, and your need for reassurance before you even speak. Dark psychology relies on this map because people who cannot lead their micro-reactions cannot protect their deeper intentions. When you take authority over your inner states, your map becomes unreadable. You look calm, grounded, and composed in a world full of noise. To lead yourself at this level, you must first understand the origin of micro-reactions. They do not come from logic, they come from unregulated emotion. When fear spikes, you flinch. When doubt rises, your voice lowers. When approval temptation appears, your eyes soften. These tiny shifts tell observers whether you are strong or vulnerable. The goal is not to suppress emotion. The goal is to detach your expression from your immediate impulse. This creates an inner buffer that makes you respond with intention instead of reflex. Machiavelli once said, if you cannot govern your expression, you cannot govern influence. Most people let their face confirm their weakness before their words even begin. They reveal insecurity through posture, they signal uncertainty through eye movements, and they broadcast inner conflict through hesitation. Self-leadership rewires this by training your expression to follow your chosen internal narrative instead of your temporary emotional storm. You decide your tone, you decide your posture, and you decide your emotional temperature before engaging with the world. The next step is emotional discipline. Emotional discipline is not rejection of emotion, it is regulation of emotion. You observe the rise of fear as a wave, not as a command. You feel the pull of anger as a signal, not as an order. You experience disappointment as information, not as identity. When you lead yourself with this mindset, your emotional system becomes organized. Organized emotion creates organized behavior, and organized behavior creates psychological strength. This strength is invisible, yet felt by everyone around you. Emotional discipline also prevents external forces from hijacking your reactions. Manipulation often begins by aiming at one emotional weak spot. Someone triggers guilt to control your choices. Someone triggers fear to shrink your decisions. Someone triggers urgency to cloud your clarity. Without self-leadership, these triggers work instantly. But when you master your emotional wave, you respond with analysis instead of panic. You ask yourself why the emotion arrived, who benefits from it, and whether it aligns with your direction. This reflective pause is enough to break most manipulative attempts. Bandura once said, if you control the meaning of emotion, you control its outcome. Meaning is the hidden switch. The same emotion can weaken you or empower you depending on the interpretation you choose. Fear can become a signal for preparation, anger can become a signal for boundaries, disappointment can become a signal for adjustment. When you assign empowering meaning, the emotion loses power to derail you. Your reactions become consistent, balanced, and intelligent. This consistency is rare, and rare qualities appear powerful. Another layer of self-leadership involves controlling your internal dialogue. Your internal dialogue determines whether you collapse under pressure or rise above it. Most people speak to themselves with fear-based language. They say they cannot handle this, they say they might fail, they say others will judge them. These silent statements weaken posture, voice, and courage. When you lead yourself, you use neutral or constructive internal dialogue. Neutral dialogue removes panic, constructive dialogue builds direction. The tone inside your mind becomes as calm as a strategist, not as chaotic as fear. The more you adjust your internal dialogue, the more your external presence shifts. People feel your steadiness without knowing why. Your calm tone makes them slow down, your controlled expression makes them choose their words carefully, and your balanced posture makes them question their assumptions about you. Presence is not magic, it is the reflection of internal leadership on the external world. Yet presence alone is not enough. You must also lead your attention. Attention is the most valuable psychological resource you own. Whatever controls your attention controls your emotions. Whatever controls your emotions controls your decisions. Most people scatter their attention across noise, distractions, complaints, and imaginary scenarios. This fragmentation weakens their mental energy. When you lead yourself, you manage attention like a limited currency. You invest it intentionally, you restrict it from draining sources, and you protect it from emotional thieves. This protection creates mental sharpness that others immediately respect. Dark psychology often works by stealing attention. It tries to pull your focus toward problems instead of solutions, toward fear instead of strategy, toward reaction instead of control. If you allow your attention to be hijacked, your entire internal system collapses into emotional chaos. This is why self-leadership treats attention as sacred. You decide what matters, and everything else loses access. This makes you unpredictable to those who expect you to react instantly. Unpredictability increases psychological weight, because people cannot anticipate your emotional path. As your attention sharpens, your ability to see hidden motives increases. You start noticing subtle pressure, subtle manipulation, and subtle power plays. You see the emotional hooks placed in conversations, the urgency traps used to force decisions, and the approval bait designed to control your movement. This new vision is dangerous because it gives you an advantage others do not realize you possess. They think they are influencing you, but you are silently analyzing them. However, there is a deeper transformation happening underneath all this. The more you lead your reactions, emotions, and attention, the more your identity forms a psychological shield that nothing external can easily penetrate. But this shield creates a new challenge that only a few people ever understand. If your mind becomes unreadable, controlled, and detached from external influence, how will you decide which connections deserve access to your inner world at all? You think you understand your strength, but your mind still leaks signals. You believe your boundaries are solid, yet subtle cracks reveal hidden entry points. If you do not seal these cracks, someone will eventually walk through them. The fourth layer of self-leadership exposes these hidden cracks, the ones that stay invisible until someone skilled presses the right emotional button. These cracks live in your expectations, your attachment to outcomes, your hunger for recognition, and your fear of losing control. Dark psychology thrives on these weak points because they are not protected by logic, they are protected by illusion. To lead yourself at this depth, you must strip away every layer of illusion that convinces you that you are already strong. Real strength begins where illusions end. Most people defend themselves only at the surface. They guard their words, they control their tone, they adjust their posture. But deep inside they remain emotionally open. They crave validation from those they admire, they fear rejection from those they do not want to disappoint, and they chase approval from people who do not matter. These cravings expose them. A single compliment can shift their judgment, and a single criticism can break their clarity. Self-leadership at this stage demands you locate these emotional openings and close them with awareness. Machiavelli once said, if you reveal your need, you reveal your weakness. Need is the invisible rope that others can pull to guide your behavior. When you need praise, you follow whoever gives it. When you need agreement, you shrink in front of disagreement. When you need control, you panic in uncertainty. These needs create psychological openings. The goal is not to eliminate desire, but to stop confusing desire with survival. When you detach your worth from external reward, you seal the first major crack. Another hidden crack is unseen attachment. Attachment to outcome creates emotional blindness. You want a specific result so desperately that you ignore red flags, you overlook disrespect. You misread signals, you tolerate imbalance. This attachment transforms you into your own manipulator. You push yourself into traps because you cannot accept losing what you imagined. When you lead yourself, you practice releasing outcomes mentally before you pursue them physically. This does not weaken focus, it strengthens independence. You move with intention, not obsession. You pursue with clarity, not desperation. Bandura once said, if your sense of control depends on outcome, you lose yourself. Self-leadership protects your identity from being chained to results. You learn to anchor your stability inside your process. The process becomes your compass, not the reward. When rewards come, you stay balanced, and when rewards delay, you stay unaffected. People sense this emotional independence, and it shifts your psychological presence. They cannot buy your attention with flattery or control you with rejection. Your value becomes self-generated, and self-generated value is immune to influence. Another crucial element of deep self-leadership is controlling your energetic boundaries. Psychological energy leaks through unnecessary arguments, pointless debates, emotional draining interactions, and excessive explanation. When you explain yourself too much, you give emotional access to people who have not earned it. When you justify every decision, you hand over authority to those who question you. Energetic boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They decide who receives your time, who receives your clarity, and who receives nothing. Strong, energetic boundaries make your presence scarce without being distant. People feel the weight of your time because you do not give it lightly. Scarcity creates value, and value creates respect. Dark psychology loses grip when it cannot drain your attention or provoke emotional reaction. Manipulators retreat when they see that nothing they do changes your internal state. This is the psychological version of unshakable gravity. It pulls respect without seeking it. But there is an even deeper crack that must be sealed, and it is the one almost everyone ignores. The crack of internal contradiction. This happens when your values say one thing, your emotions say another, and your actions say something else entirely. Contradiction weakens your psychological foundation. It makes you inconsistent, and inconsistency makes you manipulable. When your inner alignment breaks, your confidence becomes fragile. To eliminate contradiction, self-leadership demands radical clarity. You define what you stand for, what you refuse, and what you prioritize. Then you adjust your habits to match these standards. Alignment produces internal order. Internal order produces external authority. When you say something, people believe it. When you decide something, people follow it. When you set a boundary, people respect it. This is not dominance, this is coherence. Emotional neutrality is another advanced layer of self-leadership. Neutrality does not mean lack of emotion, it means lack of emotional distortion. You feel deeply, but you do not let feelings twist your perception. You observe emotion without attaching judgment. This neutrality makes you resistant to guilt traps, urgency traps, and fear spikes. The emotional hooks that people use to control others simply bounce off. They cannot infect your mood or your direction. Your neutrality becomes a kind of shield that others cannot penetrate. When you reach this stage, something unusual happens. Your presence triggers two reactions in others. Some people feel safe because your stability offers grounding. Others feel threatened because they cannot influence or read you easily. This mixed reaction is a signal of real psychological strength. Your energy becomes a mirror that reflects the inner state of others. Those who carry insecurity feel exposed, while those who seek clarity feel drawn to you. Yet this level of self-leadership reveals a final truth that few are prepared for. By sealing your internal cracks, you become immune to many forms of manipulation. You become unreadable, stable, and internally powered. But this leads to a deeper challenge that only mentally advanced individuals ever face. If no one can influence your direction anymore, how do you ensure that your own inner power does not begin influencing others in ways you never intended? You think you control your power, but power also reshapes you quietly. You believe your intentions stay pure, yet inner authority can distort perception. If you do not lead your power will begin to lead you. The fifth layer of self-leadership is the most dangerous and the least understood. Once your mind becomes independent, stable, unreadable, and immune to external manipulation, you unlock a new form of internal power. This power is calm, silent, and incredibly influential. People listen to you without you demanding it. People adjust their tone around you without knowing why. People trust your direction because your presence feels anchored. But here lies the unseen risk. When your influence rises, your psychological weight increases, and weight without awareness becomes pressure. Pressure without humility becomes distortion. Dark psychology does not only come from outside. It can emerge inside you when power grows faster than self-control. This inner distortion appears subtly. You begin assuming your judgments are always accurate. You start believing your emotional interpretation is the correct one. You feel less need to listen because your clarity has been reliable so far. Slowly, the mind forms a hidden bias, a belief that your internal compass cannot be wrong. This belief becomes the first sign that your own power is starting to manipulate you. Machiavelli once said if a ruler trusts only his mind, he becomes ruled by it. The mind is not a stable entity. It changes with mood, with energy, with pressure, and with ego. Self-leadership at this level demands you question your inner authority regularly, not to weaken it, but to keep it honest. Power must be tested, or it becomes blind. Blind power behaves like the very forces you spent years protecting yourself from. One of the most dangerous shifts happens when emotional neutrality becomes emotional detachment. Neutrality gives clarity, but detachment can remove compassion. When compassion fades, decisions become sharp but cold. Your words become powerful but harsh. Your presence becomes grounding but intimidating. Internal power should not erase empathy, it should refine it. Empathy becomes selective, not scattered. You feel deeply, but you respond with intention instead of emotional overflow. This balance keeps your influence safe and grounded. Another internal trap is the illusion of independence. When you become resistant to influence, you may assume you no longer need external feedback. But no one sees themselves completely. Without reflection from trusted minds, blind spots grow. Blind spots become assumptions, and assumptions turn into invisible weaknesses. Self-leadership requires you to maintain selective mirrors. You choose a few voices that reflect truth without flattery or fear. These mirrors prevent your internal authority from drifting into self-deceit. Bandura once said, if you stop evaluating your actions, you stop growing. Growth requires friction. Friction sharpens awareness. If your inner world becomes too comfortable, too controlled, too insulated, your evolution slows down. Comfort creates illusion. Illusion creates weakness. Real self-leadership keeps you slightly uncomfortable, not through anxiety, but through awareness. You study your motives, you examine your impulses, you question your certainty. Every question prevents arrogance. Every reflection protects your integrity. There is another internal danger. Once you master your emotions, your attention, your identity, and your boundaries, you gain a natural influence that others feel instantly. Influence is a neutral force. It can guide or distort, uplift or suppress. The risk appears when influence becomes unconscious. You may unintentionally shift the emotions of others through your tone. You may intimidate them without meaning to. You may guide their decisions simply through your confidence. If you do not take responsibility for your influence, you become a silent force shaping lives without awareness. Self-leadership at this level introduces a new responsibility. You must handle your psychological weight with precision. Your calmness can ground or silence others. Your conviction can inspire or overwhelm. Your boundaries can teach or distance. Internal power must be used with intention, not instinct. Intention requires awareness of how others absorb your presence. Without this awareness, you risk becoming the very pressure you learn to neutralize. Another hidden challenge emerges when your detachment from external validation becomes complete. You may start prioritizing efficiency over connection. You may begin viewing interactions as transactions. You may stop offering warmth because you no longer need it. This creates silent emotional isolation. People respect you, but they may stop approaching you. They admire you, but they may stop trusting you with vulnerability. Power creates distance unless balanced with softness. To maintain this balance, you must practice controlled vulnerability. Not emotional exposure, but emotional humanity. You acknowledge mistakes without weakness. You ask questions without insecurity. You express calm gratitude without fear. Controlled vulnerability keeps your inner power grounded. It reminds you that strength and humility are not opposites. They are layers of the same identity. As your psychological strength matures, your influence becomes strategic. You speak less but impact more. You reveal less but understand more. You move slowly but progress quickly. This combination makes you appear mysterious and intelligent. People interpret this mystery as authority, and authority as natural leadership. Yet the greatest internal danger arrives at this stage. When others treat you as a leader, your ego tries to believe it is inevitable. Self-leadership demands that you reject inevitability. Leadership must remain a choice, not a default. When leadership becomes unconscious, ego creeps in quietly. Ego invites entitlement. Entitlement invites blindness, and blindness is the beginning of downfall. But hidden beneath all these challenges lies an even deeper revelation, one that separates common strength from advanced psychological mastery. If your inner power can influence others so easily, what happens when you learn to influence your own subconscious at the same depth, rewriting the very instincts that shape your future without your awareness? You think you know your mind, but your subconscious shapes more than you notice. You believe you guide your instincts, yet your instincts quietly guide you. If you do not lead your subconscious, your future will be written without you. The sixth and deepest layer of self-leadership begins where few people ever look, the silent territory beneath conscious awareness. This territory contains your impulses, your habits, your emotional codes, and your automatic choices. It is the place where long-term success is either built or destroyed. Dark psychology often targets this layer because the subconscious obeys patterns, not logic. If someone shapes your patterns, they shape your destiny. The final stage of self-leadership means taking command of these patterns before anyone else can. Your subconscious is not a mystery. It is a recorder. It absorbs repetition, emotion, focus, and identity. Whatever you repeat becomes truth. Whatever you feel deeply becomes memory. Whatever you focus on becomes direction. Whatever identity you reinforce becomes the default behavior you slip into under pressure. If you do not lead these inputs, the world will feed your subconscious with noise. Noise becomes anxiety. Anxiety becomes reaction. Reaction becomes lifestyle. Self-leadership at this level means creating an inner environment that programs your subconscious with intention. Machiavelli once said, if you shape the foundation, the structure obeys you. The subconscious is your foundation. The conscious mind makes decisions, but the subconscious executes them. If your subconscious is untrained, it resists progress. It makes discipline feel painful, growth feel risky, and challenges feel dangerous. This is why many people fail, not because they lack intelligence, but because their subconscious still carries fear from old experiences. Self-leadership rewrites this foundation. You feed your subconscious repetition that supports your identity, emotional patterns that support your stability, and focus patterns that support your direction. The first subconscious layer to lead is instinct. Instinct is shaped by memory, and memory is shaped by emotional impact. If past fear shaped your instinct, you will avoid opportunities. If past rejection shaped your instinct, you will doubt your worth. If past chaos shaped your instinct, you will chase quick comfort instead of real growth. To rewrite instinct, you must pair new behavior with new emotional meaning. You show your subconscious that progress is safe, discipline is rewarding, and clarity is peaceful. Over time, instinct switches sides and begins supporting your evolution instead of fighting it. Banjaro once said, if you change your patterns, you change your destiny. Subconscious patterns decide whether your future grows or repeats. Repeated excuses become identity. Repeated discipline becomes identity. Repeated clarity becomes identity. Every action either trains or weakens the subconscious. This is why advanced self-leadership feels less like force and more like programming. You build small, consistent habits that tell your subconscious who you are becoming. Once it believes that identity, your actions become automatic. This is psychological freedom. Another subconscious force you must lead is automatic self-talk. Automatic self-talk appears without effort, like background noise. It comments on your ability, your decisions, and your worth. If this voice is negative or chaotic, your subconscious obeys its tone. But when you lead yourself, you replace background criticism with neutral or constructive statements. Neutrality prevents panic. Constructive tone builds momentum. The subconscious absorbs this new language and slowly upgrades your emotional baseline. You stop collapsing under pressure because your inner voice no longer predicts failure. Subconscious leadership also involves controlling mental imagery. Your subconscious thinks in images, not words. If the images in your mind show loss, fear, or failure, your subconscious prepares for defeat. If the images show resilience, progress, and stability, your subconscious supports your direction. When you intentionally visualize calm progress, your nervous system adapts. Your stress response lowers, your focus sharpens, and your confidence rises. This is not fantasy, it is neurological conditioning. As you take command of instinct, self-talk, and mental imagery, an extraordinary shift happens. Your conscious mind no longer fights your subconscious. They move together. Your choices become consistent. Your habits become reliable. Your discipline becomes natural. Your identity becomes unmoved by noise. People notice this harmony long before they understand it. They see someone who does not break, does not collapse, and does not lose direction under pressure. This harmony is rare, and rarity is interpreted as strength. But advanced self-leadership opens one final revelation, the most powerful of all. Once your subconscious obeys your chosen identity, your reality begins to respond to your psychological state. Opportunities align because your behavior aligns. People trust you because your presence is stable. Decisions become easier because your emotional state is balanced. Influence grows because your mind no longer divides itself between doubt and direction. This is not magic. This is structural inner order. Yet this mastery brings a final question, a question that completes your entire journey. When your conscious mind leads your subconscious, and your subconscious shapes your future, you hold the ability to design a life with precision. But precision requires responsibility. The mind you build becomes the world you walk through. So the final twist is this. If you truly gain the power to rewrite your instinct, your identity, your emotions, and your destiny, what will you choose to build when nothing inside you resists anymore?